All right, now that we got most of the theory down on how formulas work and how to do formulas and how not to do formulas, let's start by looking at some functions, some of the basic functions in Excel that you're very likely going to be using all the time when you're working. The first function we're going to look at is a function called sum. Sum you've probably seen in previous chapters of this tutorial. It simply adds a whole bunch of numbers together. Okay, when do you use sum? Well, when you need to add more than 2 or 3 cells together. Remember in the chapter that I did on things that you shouldn't do in Excel that I told you that you shouldn't chain a whole bunch of sums together? Well, in this case, you'd use sum instead of that to add your values. Here I have a list of values that I want to add together. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 and whatever. And right here, I've done what you're not supposed to do, which is chain a bunch of sums together. And as you can see, the result is 55. Now to use the sum function, I just type equals sum. And I start specifying the numbers that I want to add together. Now I can specify them individually like this. You see G4, then add a semicolon, G5, semicolon, G6, and so forth. Or I can use a range, which means I click here and I drag my cursor down. And look at what's happening in the sum function. I'm getting a range here, range from G4 to G13. And when I press enter, I get 55, which is the same result as I got the long way. Using a range with the sum function is really powerful because you can define this formula in a matter of seconds. Say that I didn't have 10 values, but instead I had 150 values. And I know that my values list ends on row 150. Well, all I'd have to do is change this from G4 to G150. And with that, I automatically add the numbers all the way down to row 150. So as you can see, this is a much faster and much safer way to add because there's no possibility of leaving cells out or getting cells duplicate like there is when you're doing something like this. So that's the first basic function, sum. The second basic function we're going to look at is a function called product. Product is exactly the same as sum, but with multiplication. What it does is multiply the first value by the second, by the third, by the fourth, and so on. Okay, when do you use product? Same as with sum. When you need to multiply a whole bunch of cells together, usually more than 3. Whenever you're going to multiply more than 3 cells, you might as well use product. So what you enter is the product function, product, like that, and you start selecting the range just the same as you would in the sum function. Now I'm not going to go on and select individual cells. I'm just going to select the range once and for all. In fact, I'm going to type it so that you can see that I can also type it. See, this range goes down to cell, let me see, to row 15. So it's row 6 to row 15. So what I do is product of, start the first cell right there, F6 to F15. Like that. And you see Excel automatically shades in blue what I'm doing the product of, and enter, and I get the same value as if I did it the long way. You see this one times this one and so on. It's the same result. Only difference, this one took me about a minute to do. This one took me all of 5 seconds to do. So product is the second basic function that you should know. Third function you should know in Excel is average. This is a regular old mathematical average. You know, you add the first value plus the second plus the third, and you divide it by the number of values. It's a regular old average. You use the function when you need the average of a range of numbers. Right here I've entered sales volume for a series of stores during the months of the year, and I want to see what my monthly sales average is. So what I do is call up the average function, equals average. Notice down here there's several variations of average. Average, average A, average if, average ifs. You're going to use the regular old average function, this one that has no suffix on it. If you're curious about the rest of the functions, you can see what each one does. Just look it up in the help file. There are some interesting functions here, but what you use 90% of the time is regular old average. So you open your parentheses and you enter the range of numbers to average here to here, and we get an average of 1354.29. Now I'm not going to do the manual average. Just trust me on this one. This is the correct result, and it's the same thing you'd get if you did a regular old average. So that's the function. Now there's another shortcut here that you can use. Here in the editing menu, in the home tab, right here under editing, you'll see this button here. It says auto sum. Now if you open the drop down, you've got average right here. So that's another way. If you don't want to type the name, just click there, click average, and the average automatically selects the range nearer where you are. Now if this range is incorrect, for example right here, I've got one more cell than I should, just correct the range manually, and there's your result. Finally, the last function we're going to see is this one called SUMPRODUCT. SUMPRODUCT is really useful, especially if you do a lot of weighted averages, or if you work billing in Excel, things like that. Or if you work estimates, for example. That's another place where SUMPRODUCT comes in really handy. What SUMPRODUCT does is it takes one column, multiplies it by another, and then adds the results together. So it's basically what you do when you're billing someone, because you have quantity, unit prices, and you need a total, and then you add all of these together to get a grand total. That's what SUMPRODUCT can do for you. Now here I have a series of items and a bunch of prices for them and a bunch of quantities, and I'm gonna make the billing statement. So what I would normally do is I would multiply these two together, and then I would copy that formula all the way to the end, and I would add all of these together. Now that was pretty easy, but how do I know that this value is correct? I mean, I want to double check my calculation. Remember that I said before that you should always double check your calculations in Excel. Well, we can do that really easy with SUMPRODUCT. We do SUMPRODUCT. We enter the first column which we're going to multiply right here, F4 to F13, which is the quantities. And then we enter a semicolon, and we enter the second column that we're going to multiply. See, this one from here to here. Make sure that the range is equivalent in size from one column to the next. If you have one more cell like that, or one less cell like that, you're not going to get a right result. So always make sure that your ranges are the same size. Do that, and I get a total of 190.13. That's how I know that all of these multiplications have been done right, and that my final sum has been done right, because I got the same result when I did it like this than when I did it through SUMPRODUCT. Okay, I'm going to expand this example one step further. Let's say that on this billing statement I need to apply a discount of $23. The sales department, well, they negotiated with the client. They said, well, we'll discount $23 from your bill. And now I need to distribute that among the items. Now what's the best way to distribute? Usually in cases like this, you distribute it depending on what percentage of the total each line is. So that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to find out what percentage of the total each line is, which means you just divide each line by the total. Remember to add these dollar signs to the total so you get a right result. If not, you're going to start getting zeros or possibly division by zero. And you copy the formula like that, maybe add a percentage sign like that so you know what you're talking about. I'm going to select all of these and look down here to make sure that the sum is 100%. That means that my percentage calculation is correct. And then I'm going to multiply each percentage by the total discount. And what that's going to do is that $23, 1% of that is going to this line, 5.2% to this line, and so on and so on. And in fact, I'm going to add a minus sign here at the start, because since it's a discount, I need to subtract it. Might as well have the numbers be negative. Or you can also do this instead if you don't want to. If you want to be mathematically correct and avoid making mistakes in your formula, the discount is negative and the formula simply works positives. So that's another way to do it. Copy that formula. And in the end, we're going to add all of this together and make sure it's $23. And sure enough, we're discounting $23. The new total would be this one plus this one. Take it down like that. Then sum. And the unit discount that we're applying is the total discount divided by the quantity. And that's it. We've got our table with the discount applied to each line. And in fact, if someone decided to change this, if it turns out that it wasn't $23, it was $21, my formulas automatically update. And now I get $21 and I get the total here, which is $169.13. Okay, how do I double check my calculation on the second table? Well, one way to do it is multiply the unit discount by the quantity and add it to the total, and you should get the same result as in new total. And for that, I'm going to use SUMPRODUCT once more. SUMPRODUCT. The first column to multiply is the quantities. The second column I'm going to multiply is the unit discount. And that's going to give me my total discount, which should be equal to $21. And that's correct. And if I add those $21 to my previous total, I get $169.13, which is the same total as down here. So that's how I know my calculation was done right and the billing statement is right. You might think this is really easy and is kind of overkill for 10 items, but just wait until you have to do an invoice or a billing statement with 200 or 300 lines. Right there, you're really going to appreciate being able to cross-check using SUMPRODUCT on these kinds of formats. Another case in which we can use SUMPRODUCT is when we want a weighted average. Here I have 4 regions. Each region has a different number of stores, and I have a sales volume right here. Now I can obtain an average sales volume for the region, which would be a matter of using the average function up here. Average, select this total volume, and I get an average per region of 2,163. But that doesn't necessarily reflect the average of each store. I mean, each region sold 2,163, but that doesn't mean that each store sold 2,163. If we wanted something closer to each store's average sales, we would need to do a weighted average, which means essentially multiply this one plus this one, and the total divided by the total stores. So we can use SUMPRODUCT for that. The first thing we're going to get is what's called the store dollars, which is simply multiply this one times this one, and add it to this one times this one. It's the top part of the typical weighted average equation. So for that, we use SUMPRODUCT. Okay, SUMPRODUCT, first column, second column, and we get the store dollars. That's the first result. And in order to obtain the weighted average, we simply divide this result by the number of stores. And right there we get $12.81 per store. And that would be a closer to the average that each store did in the analysis period that we're doing here. So those are 4 essential functions in Excel that you should know how to use. You start practicing them right now. You know, make a couple of worksheets or make a worksheet similar to this one and practice using these functions because these are essential. You're going to use them every 5 minutes in Excel. You have sum, product, average, and SUMPRODUCT. Those 4 functions are essential to Excel and everyone should learn how to use them. Thanks for watching this video tutorial. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel and to visit our website, cubicleoverlords.com, for more instructional videos like this one.